All right, for this week, I have a couple of due dates and reminders. Make sure you channel, and I see that some of you subscribed, which is a good idea. The daily lesson plans for each day are listed in the course materials folder on Blackboard. The links to the YouTube lectures, if you don't subscribe to my channel, are included in those documents. And then please look carefully at all the due dates listed on the 414 and 416 lesson plan in the course materials folder on Blackboard. Instead of listing them on this whiteboard, I just listed them in the daily plan for this week, because you have several due dates. They're all very small assignments, but you have a couple that you need to keep track of. All right, we are moving into compare contrast in this course, which I talked a little bit about in our last lecture. You should read chapters 11 through 14 in the online textbook. You'll find some tips about comparing and contrasting and why we do that in writing and in argument. One thing I want to talk about for compare contrast is the significance of audience and purpose. So, what are reasons why you would compare or contrast two documents, okay? For your compare contrast assignment, you are going to research any topic within the course topic. So mass incarceration or police brutality, we're sticking with those two themes throughout the rest of the semester. You find two documents on a narrowed down topic. So for example, we talked about this in the last lecture. For example, if you want to do gang activity in prison, you might develop a bunch of different keywords and find two things that probably have things in common because it's a similar topic, but also talk about that topic differently. And when we look at those differences, we can see the different perspectives, the different biases, etc. All right. So for comparing and contrasting, like I said, it's important to think about your audience. Remember, when you're thinking about audience, you're thinking about the demographics. And demographics include where do people live, what is their socioeconomic background, gender, sexuality, any sort of identifier. You could research for compare contrast the experience of the LGBTQIA community in prison versus the other communities. Okay. Now, once you decide on your audience that you want to speak to, then you can decide what's the purpose of your compare contrast. So let's say for audience, we want to target talking to prison wardens. We're going to do US, and maybe I'm interested in finding articles on being a male warden versus being a female warden. So this might be how I narrow down my topic. I'm interested in looking at prison wardens in the US. I'm interested in comparing and contrasting the male-female experience. And you may find that there's not a lot of difference in your research, which is okay. That's part of looking at comparing and contrasting. Okay, now for the purpose, why would you look at two articles comparing and contrasting a male warden's experience versus a female warden's experience? So that's the next thing I want to think about. Maybe I want to look at those things to look at gender equity in mass incarceration employment or legal employment. All right. So already I have a very specific topic and I haven't even done any research or done any other brainstorming besides what's on this board. All right. So that's what you're going to want to think about when you approach this compare and contrast paper. The details of the compare and contrast paper are, hold on one second, are on Blackboard in the assignments folder. You'll see the rubric and the assignment description gives you detailed instructions on how to write the paper. Now, the due dates coming up are for the writing process associated with this paper. Like you're going to have to do brainstorming, researching, and things like that. So let me just put this up on the screen that the compare contrast final paper details are on Blackboard in your paper assignments folder. And you want to make sure you look at both rubric and assignment description. Now, leading up to writing this paper, you are going to have to turn in a brainstorm, complete research, complete a model that you turn in. You're also going to look at some student samples that I will post on Blackboard of a compare contrast paper. You're going to turn in a works cited page to show that you did your research and you know how to cite things. And you're going to turn in a final draft. So that's our next big project. And each thing is broken down into little manageable pieces. Okay, so the next thing, we already talked about the purpose of the paper. We want to get some different perspectives or different authors, different sources on a topic that you are interested in related to mass incarceration and police brutality. Some research reminders, we've talked about how you need to develop keywords, especially if you're going to use Google as your search engine. I recommend using the campus databases, but if you cannot access them where you are, then obviously you're going to have to use a search engine. So make sure you're using keywords and you're looking at publication dates, credibility of authors. All those things are important, and those are things I went over in the last lecture. So the very first step is brainstorming. You can brainstorm for your compare and contrast topic without even doing any research, just like I did on the board previous to this one. I want to talk about some compare and contrast techniques. We've talked about these before. I'm sure you know them. The best ones to use are the T-chart, where you put, in my topic example, I'd put male wardens, female wardens, and list maybe what I already know or what I'm interested in finding out. Okay, so maybe this is your brainstorm and you put 10 things in each column. And then once you find your articles, you might do the Venn diagram, Article 1, Article 2, what did they have in common? What was different about them? Okay, so it's kind of a two-layered note-taking system you're going to do. So I'll do example, male wardens and female wardens. Okay, so this is just to brainstorm for keywords or for what I want to know or what I already know. This is going to be after I do my research when I'm taking some notes on the similarities and differences. All right, like I said before, the requirements for this paper, you're going to do a brainstorm, which you're going to turn in. You are going to complete research on your own. You're going to complete an outline, which I will model for you in a minute. You're going to take a look at the student samples I put on Blackboard. You're going to complete a works cited page that you turn in as an assignment by itself. And you're going to turn in a final draft, okay? To give you an idea of the rest of the semester, compare contrast is next, and then our final big project is a cause and effect essay. Okay. Now, what I wanted to do is a model outline for comparing and contrasting, because you will need to do that coming up soon. Okay. There are kind of two ways you can structure compare contrast. You can either talk about each article separately, and then you're going to have a conclusion paragraph that brings about the analysis and the connections, or you can choose subtopics within the articles and model your outline based on that. So let's say I'm going to continue with my example of female versus male wardens. You're going to have your introduction. Remember, you want to have a hook. You want to preview your main ideas. And you want to have a thesis. And for a thesis, this is not just an informational compare-contrast. You're comparing and contrasting for a purpose. So the thesis is answering, what is that purpose? So why are you comparing and contrasting? Okay. So what is the purpose of your compare and contrast paper? And I already told you in my brainstorm that mine might be, I want to look at gender equity in the mass incarceration system. During my research, I might realize, oh, I can't really do the mass incarceration system because there's lots of different systems. There's state system, federal system, there's different security levels, there's private prisons, public prisons. So I might want to focus in more on that. Okay, so the more specific you can get, the better output you're going to have. Now, for the body, you can do one of two things. You can do your comparisons, your similarities, and your differences separately. And then you would bring it all together in the conclusion. Whoops. All right, so you can either do it, you know, similarities, differences, or maybe there are a lot of similarities and only a few differences. So maybe you have 2 paragraphs on the similarities and 1 paragraph on the contrast. All right. What I would recommend here is choose some sort of, choose topics within both articles that you want to talk about. So for example, for mine, I might contrast the pay. I might contrast the treatment by prisoners of wardens. And for the comparison, I might compare administrative expectations. Maybe they're similar. I might compare roles and authority for both male and female wardens and things like that. Okay. And then in the conclusion, you bring it all together. The other way you can organize this essay and this outline, which you will eventually have to do, is by article. So this would be body paragraph 1, talk about article 1, body paragraph 2, summarize article 2, and then you're going to have more body, comparing and contrasting those. So basically you can either integrate the compare and contrast while you're talking about articles, or you can separate the analysis from a summary. Those are the 2 main differences. Okay. If you need help with developing topics or doing some research, you can definitely reach out to me and I can help you. I am updating grades this week, so please keep an eye on that. I am expecting kind of minimal work from you, and in order to pass the course, you have to do it. So please make sure you're looking at Blackboard at your grade and where you stand in the course, and that you're staying in touch with me. If you have any questions about the compare and contrast assignment, like I said, you should look at the paper description, the paper rubric, so you know where you're going with this. Right now, you just need to focus on your brainstorm. Then you need to focus on research process. Then you need to focus on outlining, doing your works cited, which using Purdue OWL is a good way to double check your sources. And then you're going to work towards your final draft. You can see all of this posted in Blackboard. The course materials has the review of what we went over today in this lecture. And the assignments, you're going to want to look at the homework assignments and the paper assignments folder to find the information that is in this unit of comparing and contrasting. Remember, too, that you want to look at chapters 11 through 14 in the online textbook. You'll find a lot of information about compare contrast. You'll also find a sample there. You will also find my student samples in the course materials folder that you can take a look at for comparing and contrasting.